let's talk about the Atlanta Hawks, a team that underperformed, a team that has big question marks this offseason. And we're going to try to cover some of that right now. Michael Bolton, he wants to hear about it.
Thanks, Josh. It's Michael Bolton here, and it's time for another episode of the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast. Let's get to it.
Let's get to it, indeed.
You are Locked On Fantasy Basketball, your daily fantasy basketball podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast, brought to you by Basketball Monster. My name is Josh Lloyd, and I've got a very pressing question for you guys. What's your favorite flavor of La Snack? I'm also the lead fantasy analyst at basketballmonster.com, and you can find me on Twitter as always at redrock_bball, on TikTok at redrock_bball, and on Instagram at Locked On Fantasy Basketball. Today's episode is brought to you by Prize Picks, the easiest and the most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA, use the code all lowercase LockedOnNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. Thank you also for making Locked On Fantasy Basketball your first listen every day. We are free. We're available for you to double bang on all platforms. So thumb, comment, bell, subscribe, review, stars. That's what we do. Let's talk Hawks. They are a team, obviously, that underperformed. We just said that. A lot of question marks about the backcourt. It feels like it's come to a spot of no return, but I thought that was the case in the middle of the season. We also thought that was the case with the center position for the last 2 years, maybe. And they're stubborn. They do have different decision makers in charge now, but still, there's just a feeling of, I don't know where this goes. I worry that they make a poor decision when trying to decide all this stuff, but it feels like it's going to be a slightly different Hawks team next season. That would be my guess. But which way they go, I don't know. Let's have a look at the squad. Let's have a look at where they were. 36-46. Terrible record. They were in the play-in. We know that. They didn't win the play-in. We know that. That's why they're in the lottery. They had a negative 1.6 net rating, so that's not terrible, but obviously they should have been much better than this. They had the 11th best offense under Quinn Snyder, but the 26th best defense. I would say that Snyder was an upgrade over Nate McMillan, but the team didn't really take steps forward, and some of that is on him, but I think some of it's also on the roster was terrible. The roster was terrible. There were poorly constructed ideas about how the roster works, giving up too many assets to make that roster not fit, and also just a complete lack of depth. And some of that's on Snyder as well, but not playing some of these players. Like first-round pick AJ Griffin the year before, just not in the rotation whatsoever. There's other factors beside that, which I'm not going to elaborate on here. But yeah, like just the bench and the depth, horrific. They had a preseason over-under of 42.5. I nabbed them at 42, so half under. That's technically a W, but it's a very, very tenuous W. So I'm not going to get too excited about that. In fact, I'm not excited about it at all. In the draft, yes, they have a lottery pick, which means if you have a lottery pick that is yours, there is a chance you move up into the top 4. They've got about an 11% chance of moving up into the top 4, 3% chance at pick number 1. They can also pick anywhere between 10 and 14. But the most likely scenario is they finish at pick 10, which is a 66% chance. The second most likely outcome is pick 11, and then the next most likely outcome is pick 4. But that's only 4%. So that's all they got. They don't have their second round pick. I don't even know where that one went, but they don't. Let's have a look. Where did their pick go? Their second rounder went to Portland. What's this deal? The Wiseman, Peyton, Bay, Knox, Labissiere deal. Okay, cool. So they don't have their second round pick. Their most common starting group for the season, you won't be shocked at this, it is Trae Murray. That's close enough. Trae Young and Dejounte Murray. The depressed penis, Saddiq Bey, Jalen Johnson, and Clint Capella. That was their most commonly used starting lineup. Bey was elevated into that role when DeAndre Hunter, shockingly enough, missed time. But that was their most common starting group. That wasn't their best lineup. Their best lineup was actually a plus 18.2. Trae Young, Bogdan Bogdanovic, Garrison Matthews, Saddiq Bey, and Onyeka Okongwu. It's interesting that Jalen Johnson's not in that group. It's even more interesting to me that Dejounte Murray's not in that group. And I know there is a big... People hate Trae Young. They hate him. There's people who like him, but he is just someone that people hate. So the general overriding idea is that Dejounte Murray, the team is better with Dejounte Murray there. I would want you to find any sort of stats that show you that. Well, here they won games. Games in March for bad teams don't count. Teams have very different motivations through that time period. And I'd say every single number you'd look at would tell you that Trae Young's a significantly better player than Dejounte Murray. I have absolutely no problem saying that. Dejounte Murray can put up better numbers in situations where the team is expected to be terrible. But as a player, there's just no comparison to me. Trae Young, Bogdan Bogdanovic, Garrison Matthews, Saddiq Bey, Onyeka Okongwu plus 18.2, that lineup. Having that low usage shooter like Garrison Matthews instead of whatever it is that DeAndre Hunter does is interesting. Saddiq Bey, not really sure how he's helping because he's a nothing as well. But honestly, put Jalen Johnson in there for Saddiq, who's not going to play next season really at all. Chuck somebody else there at the 3. Young, Bogdanovic, Shooter, Johnson, Okongwu. Not a bad lineup. I think that's where you have success. But I'm not sure that's the direction they're going to head to. They've got 4 restricted free agents. 2 of them are relatively important, and one of them is the depressed penis Saddiq Bey, who tore his ACL and is probably going to miss most of the season. So that's going to complicate this scenario. It puts him in a terrible spot. Does he just have to take the restricted tender offer? I doubt it, but he's not in a position to have a big payday. He shouldn't because he's not good. Let's get that out of the way. He's very not good. Very much not good. But any chance of a team being convinced that he is good is out the window because he's just not going to play in year 1 of this deal. So what does he take? Like a 2+1? He's got no bargaining power whatsoever. Which again, as much as I don't think he's very good, I feel extraordinarily sorry for him that this happened at this point when he's about to get into a larger contract. ACL is not a death knell for someone's career, very obviously, but takes 2 years to get back to your normal self, and we're in this terrible spot of him trying to negotiate a new deal. Dylan Windler's a restricted guy. I don't think he's going to make it. But the other one is Vic Krejci, which again, really weird scenario. They could have converted him and made him available to play in the playoffs when they had everyone out. They didn't. He's now a restricted free agent. So is he going to play? Is he going somewhere else? What's the deal here? I thought he was solid enough as a rotation player. If you think that they want to bring him back, then why didn't they just make him available for the playoffs? Or play in, sorry. Which if they had won, he would have been in the playoffs. Nothing about that makes any sense to me. And then Seth Lundy, who was a second-round pick, we just never really saw him. He's on a 2-way, don't really care that much. The 2 unrestricted guys are Trent Forrest and Wes Matthews. Nothing really to care about there. Wes Matthews is obviously washed up. Trent Forrest was on a 2-way. He used his 50 games very, very early. It took a while for them to convert him. He is okay as an emergency 3rd or 4th string point guard, but that's realistically about it. And there's only one player with an option. That's a team option on Garrison Matthews, who again is a good shooter, but I don't want him in my top 10 rotation players. He's okay as a shooter. Again, he was part of that best lineup, but he's just not a guy that you feel any level of excitement about. Their 3rd string center, Bruno Fernando, has a non-guaranteed lob threat legend himself. He has acquitted himself well enough, not to start over Şengün, but to be an emergency 3rd string center. I would be looking at that guarantee. I'd pick it up, have him there. Cool. If he's your backup because they move on from Okongwu or Capella, I think you're not in a terrible spot. I think he was relatively passable this season. And then for the next season, there are 2 main expiring deals that are important. This is the final year coming up of Clint Capella's contract. He'll be unrestricted. And then there is Jalen Johnson, who will be restricted after next season, but meaning that he is now rookie extension eligible. I think that he should have been the most improved player. Of course, he wasn't eligible for that award because those, great rules that were created. I think what he was able to do and turn himself into at least close to the second best player on this team was huge. And he is going to get a massive contract. It has to be big. I hope that he's able to give himself $25 million a year. That's what he should get. That is how much I believe in what Jalen Johnson can bring. So that's where they're at. So decisions need to be made. Not really a big one needs to be made on Jalen because you just make that decision. But what do you do with Clint Capella, who's expiring, and then what do you do with Murray and Young? The only rationale I find behind trading Trae Young is that you get more back in return, which can help kickstart a rebuild. But if you're doing it because you think Dejounte Murray's better, got some news for you. You're going to be disappointed. Today's episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. PrizePicks is America's #1 fantasy sports app. It's got over 3 million members. It's the easiest and most exciting way to play DFS as well. You watch your favorite sports, you pick your players, you pick more or less on 2 individual player stats or more, two or more individual player stats, and you watch the winnings roll in. We've got the NHL playoffs rolling, Major League Baseball is going, the NBA playoffs, we're in the second round at the moment. So you can go in there, pick your 2 to 6 individual players. You can actually win now up to 100 times your money on PrizePicks with as little as 4 correct picks, turning $10 into $1,000 in all of those different sports on PrizePicks, America's #1 fantasy sports app. Go to and download the App Store, or go to the App Store and download the app today, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. So, download the app, use the code LOCKEDONNBA, and get that first deposit match up to $100. PrizePicks, pick more, pick less. It is that easy. Today's episode is also brought to you by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. It's the formula for winning championships. It's also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything that you need to maintain your vehicle. Or, not even maintain it, like improve it. Level it up, in fact, to peak performance. Seat covers, steering wheels, LED lights, roof racks, bumper somethings, display module, whatever. Rack and pinion steering, that's a word. It's all ball bearings these days. But eBay's got whatever part you need for your car. There's over 122 million parts on eBay. That's a lot. You don't have to search through every one. They have filters and you can type in stuff. It makes it easier for you. But you can get those parts. And with the eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because you're burning rubber and not cash. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit is only available to US customers. How many times have you heard that eBay ad on other podcasts? It's everywhere. And I suppose for me as a podcaster, I see the script they give us and I hear people reading it absolutely verbatim. Like, come on, put a bit of flavor into it. What are you doing? Passion, drive, patience. Do something better. Fire it up. Get it going. Anyway, who cares? I do because I'm talking about it. Maybe you don't. Let's look at the players. Who are the guys we're going to talk about? I'm going to include 6 guys here in this starter zone. And again, does Sadiq come back? Does Clint Capella come back? Are both Trae and Dejounte here at the start of next season? Again, everything that I was told from sources was that there was a huge locker room issue last season. And I can't tell you everything that I heard, but that is why I was very strong when they're going to trade Dejounte Murray. And then Quinn Snyder comes out. It's like, no, I actually want Dejounte to stay. That really worked really well for you, Quinn. Maybe you shouldn't have done that. So I don't know what happens. But I know there was a ton of locker room unrest. I know what the issue was. I can't come out and say it. But I know what the issue was. And that's why I was so confused as to the direction they took through the deadline. And I just don't know what they're going to do now. So, again, people hate on Trae Young. He's still really, really, really good. And for fantasy, he exceeded your expectations, no matter what you think. 8th ranked player in -1. He was 85th on Yahoo, which again is a great indication to be really cautious about looking at those numbers. It's because he played 54 games, he played 36 minutes, and he's 25. He was the 13th ranked player in points leagues. His ADP was 18. It's a W. It's a massive W just on value-based value alone. Again, no one was looking at, well, we're taking Trae at 18 because he's an injury risk. Because the thing about Trae Young that people would say is, well, he just plays all the time. Which, of course, you can't trust. He averaged 26 points with 3 dribbles, 3 rebounds, 11 assists, and 1.3 steals. Now, did Trae Young improve as a defender? Yes. Is he a good defender? No. But he did improve. He shot 48 on his 2s, 37 on his 3s for 43 overall, 86 from the line on good volume. Yes, he gets a lot of turnovers, but he also gets 11 assists. His #1 crafted comp was a bloke by the name of Derek with an A, Derek Martin in year 3. Couldn't tell you about Derek Martin, sorry to tell you, but I can tell you that year 6, Darren Williams was his second one. and that is peak Darren Williams. And Trae Young's just a really, really good player. 91st percentile EPM, 76th in crafted. It shouldn't be that hard to build a good team around Trae Young. The problem is that the Dejounte Murray is not the piece that you build around to make that team good. He had 100th percentile offensive load. 100th. And I said this when the Dejounte Murray trade went down. And people go, oh, it would be great. We'll let Trae Young play off the ball. And I go, it won't, because A, that's not what Trae does, but it's also not how you use Trae Young. Because if there's a situation where you go, well, who do I want initiating the offense? Trae Young or someone significantly worse? I want Trae Young. I want Trae Young as a gravity shooter, a deep range shooter, one of the best passers in the NBA. That is who I want to have the ball. And that's what the offense is. Meaning, again, Dejounte Murray sits around and goes, what am I doing? That's where he doesn't fit that position at all. The fit doesn't work. I've been pretty adamant about that since when the trade happened. That I was massively down on where Dejounte was. As a player, I think he was significantly overrated as a player. And I think Trae is still the better guy. But he might end up on a different team. Now, I think wherever Trae goes, he's going to be fine from fantasy. Maybe he doesn't get 26 points and maybe he doesn't play 36 minutes. Maybe it's 23 points, 10 assists, 33 minutes. But overall, he's fine as a second-round guy. Maybe someone we look at the turn. He's still 25. He'll be 26 next season. No real concerns there for me. The interesting one is going to be this bloke, Dejounte Murray, who, again, he has a staunch group of supporters. And I will tell you my biases whenever they exist. I don't like this guy. I don't like him necessarily as a player. I don't like that summer of antics that he went through of bouncing balls off blokes' heads and throwing weird little punches in pickup games. I didn't like it. I don't like what I've heard about the locker room dynamics in this team. His best season was on a Spurs team that was terrible, where they just said, just do whatever you want. And he did, and the numbers were great, but it was bad. Like, he was not as good as those numbers suggest. He's a guy that made his money or made his reputation of being this elite defender, and he has not been that player. He's worked very, very hard to shoot much better. But there is no rationale for me to suggest that he is a better player than Trae Young, and he is the guy that you want to build around for numerous reasons. He's also 2 years older than Trae, so he's 27 and a half. He played 36 minutes a night in his 78 games. And you can tell me he's durable. Cool. He also missed an entire season with a torn ACL, so what's durable? 31st in -1 rankings. He was ranked 22 on Yahoo. Again, that's where those Yahoo ranks can be really confusing too. Was Dejounte Murray the 22nd best player while Trae Young was the 82nd best? Of course not. Of course he wasn't. His ADP was 34, so bang on, third round. And if it wasn't for those 30 games that Trae missed, Dejounte wasn't in the top 50. And this is the thing with him, is where you have to monitor it. Does Dejounte get moved? Does Trae get moved? If Trae is moved, is Dejounte going to be the number one guy? Because he'll put up numbers. There's no question about that. Does Dejounte go somewhere else where he is that number one guy akin to his season with the Spurs? Then he'll put up numbers. And he'll be much better than this. But overall, when you're trying to plan things out multiple years, I think that a team that invests in him as that number one guy will go nowhere, and then that'll be short-lived. 22 points, 2.5 threes, 5 rebounds, 6.5 assists, 1.4 steals. Remember, he led the league in steals a couple of years ago with 2. The volatility there is crazy. 46 from the field, 79 from the line. He's done really well to work on his free throw shooting and his overall shooting. 36 from 3, 52 from his 2s. The comparison players are pretty wild. Year 6 of Ish Smith. Look at Ish Smith's player log. I think he was traded every season in his first 6 apart from 1. And the other one is Monte Alice, year 7. 80th percentile EPM, 65th percentile CPM. Now, just don't get me wrong on this. I'm not saying Dejounte Murray is a bad player. I'm not saying he's trash at all. He's a very good player who has worked really hard in some of his deficiencies, like shooting. But it's that guy. It's the Brandon Ingram effect. If you make him your number one player and make everything run around him and you put the ball in his hands to let him run things, you will have a 30-win team. Not that they're much better than that, but that's where you go. The numbers can be great. That's great to hit your little game winners and have your 40-point games where you're taking 35 shots or whatever. But overall, I just don't think it's a strong way to build a team. And then when he has to scale back into different roles because that doesn't work, where does he go? So, again, the numbers are fine. Interestingly, his shot quality or shooting quality, 52nd percentile. So even though he's worked on his shooting, Still not considered a very good shooter. Mid-pack. And again, just don't get it confused. I do not think that he is bad. I do not think that he is trash. I'm not a Dejounte hater. I'm just using a bunch of information that I have from watching him, from hearing about him, from looking at his numbers, to suggest that he is fine, but he's not the guy. And if they trade Trae and start Dejounte, he will be a top 20 fantasy player. I've got no question about that. But that doesn't always mean whether you're good or bad. I would hope, especially if you're watching this show now, that you're well aware of that. Today's episode is brought to you by Monopoly Go. If you're someone out there, you're playing sport and you're up against someone who maybe tries to bounce the ball off your head, go, hang on, that's not on. What are we doing here? Get out of here. But that sort of behavior, you can actually encourage that stuff in Monopoly Go. Get your friends, metaphorically bounce the ball off their head by stealing money out of their bank vault in a heist, knock down their landmarks, kiss and make up, team up, build your boards back up, share stickers between each other. It's like the classic Monopoly game, but it's fast, it's on your phone. You have big timed tournaments you can enter as well with your friends, team up, knock down others. It's fun. There's different challenges and different things happening every day. And it's just a great game to go and get and have it on your phone. Like, why not? There's always something fun and new to discover on Monopoly Go. So go and download it now for free in Google Play or the App Store. Monopoly Go. Don't bounce balls off your head. Download this instead. Some might say that's fire bars. Wouldn't be me that would say that, but some might say that. Let's go into some more of these starters. Let's talk Jalen Johnson, who was someone that I regret not being as high on. Here's the thing that happened with Jalen Johnson. I'm sure you've heard this story before, but if you haven't, I'm going to tell it again. When John Collins was traded, I went, yes, let's go. It is Jalen Johnson time. All right, I'm excited for this. Someone that me and Matt Lawson talked about for dynasty sort of breakout players after last season, 22-23. I said, yes, they have cleared the space and we're there. And then somebody, they've got Sadiq Bey. They'll probably play him. Quinn likes that smaller power forward who shoots. And I went, yeah, you're right. That is what Quinn Snyder likes. So we weren't sure what they were going to do. And I was very, very big on let's take Jalen in those last couple of rounds. The skill set is great. I think the player is good. And if I was the Hawks, he would be starting without any question. But I'm not the Hawks. I've got to try and read what Quinn Snyder's going to do. And then I was like, I'm going to take Sadiq Bey in drafts as well because I think they're going to start him. And they did start Sadiq Bey. And it lasted one game. And then Jalen Johnson took over. Jalen ended up being the 54th ranked player this season in -1, 86th on Yahoo, 55th in points. His ADP, I'm staggered at this. Not that he's at 145 because we talked about you take him round 11, round 10, round 11, round 12, no problem with that. But round 145 is the last round 13. But he was drafted in 22% of leagues. I am staggered. Well, also means that I've got 78% of leagues that don't listen to me at all, which is room for me to grow. 145, ADP, 22% drafted, insane. 16 and 9 with 1-3 a game, 1.3 dribbles, 3.6 assists, 1.2 steals, 0.8 blocks, shot 51 and 73. 57 on his twos, 36 on his threes. There's a little bit of context required there as he did shoot well early and it started to come down and down and down, especially the free throws. So there's a little bit of a worry with that. His best comp was year 4 Aaron Gordon. That's Orlando Aaron Gordon. It's year 4 Jared Sullinger as well, where I go, I don't know about that one. He was 66th percentile EPM, 67th on crafted. What I found really interesting is his box creation, which is a metric used to determine how much responsibility you have for creating shots. Is it for yourself? Is it for your teammates? Not just assists, not just shots, not just usage. It's what are you doing? What's your responsibility in running the offense, basically? And as a third-year power forward with no starting experience, the fact that he's 70th percentile is really very interesting. He has significant passing upside. He's got defensive upside. He's got shooting upside. Whether it all comes together again, I don't know. And I said I would have had him as the most improved player if he was eligible. He played 34 minutes a night. That's not really going to go up too much. He's only 22, but he had 3 ankle sprains and a broken wrist, which kept him at 56 games. I think we can expect more than that next season, but maybe there's an extra minute. But I think that you cannot You will not be able to get him outside the top 50. I am very certain of that. And if you do get him outside the top 50, I think that's going to be a very lucky move. He's 22. Like, this is still steps to improve. And the steps are going to be become a 78 free throw guy. Might not happen. Become a 37 3-point guy. Yeah, maybe. But it's going to be get to 5 assists. Get to 1.2 blocks with 1.4 steals. That's a top 20 player. I'm very much in on Jalen Johnson. I'm annoyed that wasn't as in on him because I sort of diverted my thoughts towards what I thought Quinn Snyder would do versus what I think should happen. And I think that's generally the right move. It's like, what do you think the coach will do versus what would I do? Because it doesn't really matter what I would do in a lot of cases. But Quinn figured it out really, really quickly. Clint Capella is the next one. There is a very clear cliff here. He's 100th in -1 ranking, so not a disaster season. 81st on Yahoo. Again, the Yahoo ranks will tell you that Clint was better than Trae Young this season. No problem. ADP was 77. He was 86th in points leagues. He averaged 11.5 points, 10.5 rebounds with 1.5 blocks. Now, he's not this 2.5 blocks guy anymore, but he's a 3-category player. And 2 of the categories are dropping. Instead of being 64, 65 from the field, we're down to 57. He did improve his free throws up to 63, but 1.5 blocks and 57%. He's almost 30. He played 26 minutes a night. And if it wasn't for the Okongwu injury towards the end of the season, he probably would have ended the season as a bench player, playing 21 minutes a night. I would be, again, I don't know what they're doing. I don't know why you draft a player as a center, pick number 6, and then play them off the bench for 4 straight years. It is very clear to me that Capella has declined enough, even though he's still solid, that you don't have to look at him as a starter. And this is the final year of his contract, but I don't know what they're doing. His best comps for this last season, year 7, Hassan Whiteside, final year in Miami, and year 9 for Dale Davis, Trace's dad. His advanced stuff was pretty good. 83rd percentile EPM, 79th in crafted. His rim frequency, so contesting shots frequency at the rim, 90th percentile, still really good. But he's very much a specialist. And some of those things that he specialized in, high efficiency finishing, pick and rolls, shot blocking, have dropped. And at this age, he's past the point of no return, which is age 29, where things start to decline. It's just about how fast it declines. And we saw a big decline. I'm not going to come out here and tell you for sure that he's gone or for sure that he's coming off the bench. But you have to think it's got to be a consideration here. He was drafted 77th. I don't think we picked in the top 100 this season. And I think that'll be right. Because this guy is coming. Onyeka Okongwu. It was a very disappointing season for Okongwu. It's very, very important when you're looking at Onyeka Okongwu from a fantasy perspective that you understand what rankings mean and what they do. If you look at a straight 9 cat ranking or projection for him, it'll have him ranked very highly, and that is just a foolish way to go about it. I've had people tell me, Josh, you had him projected at 35 this season, and I absolutely did not. As you would have seen as I talk and I write articles and I talk podcasts about it, if you ever approach anything that I do with projections, looking at straight 9-cat numbers, that is just not reflective of anything that I think. His ADP was 104, but the reason he gets that high is low turnovers, high blocks, high steals, high field goals, high free throws, which is not something you get, well, not high steals. Blocks, field goals, free throws, low turnovers. You don't get that from big men all that often. He was able to... I didn't project it like 24 minutes a night. He played 26. So he actually beat my minutes projection. Part of the problem here is his rim defense just disappeared. His shot blocking disappeared. His rim contests disappeared. He's only in the 71st percentile at rim contest frequency. And that's part of what his value was. Really high block numbers. And he just stopped contesting shots. He averaged 10 and 7 in those 26 minutes. Very low usage. He shot 68 on his 2, so that's great. 33 on 3s, that's great. He started to play some power forward and started to hit 3s. That's great. I think he can actually pass, but only 1.3 assists and 1.1 blocks with 0.8 turnovers. He was 148th in -1 and a huge disappointment, even though he got 26 minutes. So the minutes weren't the problem. It wasn't that we went in and said, we expect Onyeka Okongwu to start, and he didn't. Therefore, what a stupid projection, because He exceeded my minutes expectation. All of his rate stats just plummeted. He just didn't have any usage. He didn't block shots anymore. It just disappeared. So I don't know where that goes. When Capella did get injured near the All-Star break, Okongwu stepped into that role and he started showing exactly why we like him for fantasy. He played 33 minutes a night and he was a top 40 player over that time frame. So if there's any inkling of Okongwu being a 30-minute-a-night starter, we absolutely fire that up. That is what he can be. He is still very good. But it was a very disappointing season for most of it. His best comps were Daniel Gafford, year 3, and also power forward legend, fantasy legend, Terrence Jones, who was also quite a bad real-life player, but was able to put up very good fantasy production. Okongwu was 53rd percentile EPM, 61st in CPM. As I said, his rim frequency down to 71st percentile, which is really quite poor. He is still just 23 and he's entering the first year of his new contract. It's surely got to be time, though. It has to be time. Maybe not. He's also had a lot of injuries, a lot of toe problems. He had the shoulder issue the year before. Surely it's got to be time. But, I feel like we've said that every year. And the last one I want to talk about as a starter is this bloke, DeAndre Hunter, mainly because Sadiq Bey is not going to be there next season for most of it. DeAndre Hunter's 26, so theoretically he's in his prime. He played only 57 games, knee problems always for him. 29 minutes, 159th in -1, 182nd on Yahoo. His ADP was 145, but only drafted in 18% of leagues because he just is a bad fantasy player, and that's just not going to change. We are 5-6 years into the DeAndre Hunter experience. We've had like one 10-game stretch of him being good. That's it. And you say, why is he not good? Because he averaged 15.6 points, which is a big number. 15 is a big number. It's big, but from a standard fantasy perspective, it's below average. All right? And then he does nothing else. 3.9 rebounds for a guy that's playing some power forward. 1.5 assists. A lockdown perimeter defender averaging a combined 1 steals and blocks. 0.7 steals, 0.3 blocks. He shot 46 from the field. 85 from the line, which he did improve his free throws immensely. 39 from 3, that's great. But it's just the biggest nothing player of all time. He sometimes scores, and that means you need a situation where other guys are out so he gets the ball more, and he doesn't do another single thing. His best comps were year 8 of Tim Thomas and year 5 of Wally Szczerbiak. Szczerbiak was a good player, made an all-star game. Hunter is just unbelievably mid. A guy that should be a 3-and-D player who just doesn't do enough in any of those areas and just gives us nothing fantasy-wise. 58th percentile EPM, 44th in CPM. And what I found interesting, passer rating. 13th percentile. Like, bro, can you learn a single pass? Do you have any ability to do that? Apparently not. I am so out on DeAndre Hunter as a starter. I'm so out on DeAndre Hunter as any sort of fantasy option. But again, they don't have the other option. He's probably going to have to start. Maybe you could start Bogdanovic full-time. I'm not going to include Bogdan in this starters group. I think that they still want him as a backup. But Hunter just is not it, man. I would have hoped that AJ Griffin could elevate. And that's it. I'm not even going to talk about AJ Griffin here because he just didn't play. And I have some understanding of some of it, but it's still relatively bizarre what happened to AJ as an 18/19-year-old as a rookie where he was pretty good to being just, you actually can't ever touch the floor. Just some very weird stuff. And I wish I could expand on all that I know. So that's Hunter. Don't like it. Don't like him. I don't think he's a very good player. And I think I think most people will be sort of coming around on that idea now. Who are some other guys that we do need to talk about here? And this is where we will start with old mate Bogdanovic. And I say old mate because it's funny, but also because he's old. He's 32, Bogdan. I think that he should have won Sixth Man of the Year. I think that he was unbelievably good for this team, and finally he entered the season healthy with no knee problems. But he is 32. He played 79 games. He played 30 minutes. He was a 78th ranked player. We could have got him in basically any league in the last round, ADP of 140. Yahoo ranks him 34th again, insane. If you have any inkling, any predilection to draft Bogdan in the 3rd round next season, then I think you've lost your league immediately. He averaged 17 points with 3 threes, 3.5 rebounds, 3 assists, 1.2 steals, shooting 43 and 92, including 37 from 3. He was just really good. When they needed him to start, when they needed him to handle the ball, he did it. When he needed to be more of a shooter, he did it. He's not a great defender, but he improved defensively. His best comps were year 9 Michael Finley and year 10 Dal Curry. That's the shooting. Finley, some of that all-round ability. He was 89th percentile in both EPM and crafted plus minus, so just really, really, really impactful player. His creation-based turnover percentage, your turnover percentage is a base of how much creation you're doing, was 78th percentile. That's really strong because he did have a decent responsibility on this team. But again, he's 32. He doesn't really make sense on this team necessarily because they're not going anywhere. And I would suggest this is the best season that we'll get out of Bogdan. A, banking on his health at age 32, banking on the team missing Trae Young and Jalen Johnson for that period of time. But also, he just might not be able to do this at this level again, at age 32. I love what he did. And if everything sort of remains the same, we've got no problem taking a flyer on him because we see it. You pick him 140, he can be a top 80 player. But again, banking on a 32-year-old super sub type of a player, I don't think it's necessarily a winning strategy most of the time. It's also not a winning strategy to believe that Saddiq Bey is good. 150th ranked player in -1. He was drafted at 145. And I would tell you now, I drafted him in a lot of mock drafts because, again, I thought he would start. He would play 32 minutes. You'd get 17 points with 3 threes and 6 rebounds. Okay, why am I getting this at the end of the draft? I'm not. And then, of course, him being not good, which I was very much at pains to tell you I think he is not good, resulted in him being benched for Jalen Johnson immediately. Yes, he got back into the lineup when Hunter went down and then when Johnson went down, but overall he's just not very good. He's 25, torn ACL, 63 games, 33 minutes. He averaged under 14 points. He shot 84 from the line and 42 from the field, but this is a 3-and-D guy who sucks at defense and sucks at shooting. 32% on his threes. He averaged 6.5 boards, that's fine, but 0.8 steals, 1.5 assists, 52 on his twos. He thinks that he's the guy. Well, he scored 50 in a game once, Josh. That's true. But he's a guy that thinks that he's better than he is. As most players do, obviously. But, bro, just stay and shoot threes. Don't take 2 dribbles and step in and try and take a long 2. Best comps were year 3, Dale Ellis. That's okay. Year 4, Linus Kleiser. Remember that bloke? You shouldn't, but if you do, that's where you go. Absolutely not interested in Saddiq Bey. 57th percentile EPM, 43rd in CPM, and he's crafted defensive plus minus. That defensive side of that metric, 3rd percentile. Can't be a 3-and-D player when you're one of the worst defensive players in the NBA. And you're not a good shooter. So what do you do around here? It's the Office Space meme. What do you actually do here? What's the point of him being around? And I know, again, I have immense sympathy. Make all your money, Saddiq, do all that. Immense sympathy for the ACL at this point, but he is just not very good. And he's one of those players that's got this pedigree where you think you have to give him more minutes and more shots, and it leads to bad outcomes a lot of the time. And it's been the case on 2 different teams. Much like with DeAndre Hunter, I think we're just out on him having any sort of consistent fantasy impact. 33 minutes a night in year 4, and he still just sniffs the top 150. Nah, not interested in the slightest. This guy played a lot of minutes down the stretch. Vic Krejci, he's not a very good fantasy guy, 263rd. He's only 24, played only 22 games with 25 minutes a night. Was cut by he was traded by the Thunder and then sort of didn't really play much early in the season, but then when players went down like Trae Young, he started a ton of games. There was no Jalen Johnson as well. He started at the 3, at the 4 sometimes. And while he's never going to blow us away as being awesome, he's that sort of player. When I showed that best lineup earlier and I had Garrison Matthews at the 3, I didn't even mention just this guy at the 3. 9.9 usage, very low, didn't need more. 6 points, 2.5 boards, 2.5 assists, and 0.6 steals in 25 minutes. Shot 83 from the line, 64 on 2s, 41 on 3s, didn't turn the ball over. That's almost not the perfect player, but it's a guy that doesn't need the ball, does the hard things, defensively, offensively, shoots well, and fits in. 41st percentile EPM is 291st in Dark Oaks. They don't have the crafted number up for him. And 291st is like middle of the pack NBA. For Vic Krejci, who's on a 2-way. Still is on a 2-way. He deserves a full contract. He's a rotation player. He is never going to blow us away for fantasy. He's never going to be an accumulator of stats. But in terms of a fit, I think the fit is there for him. And the last one is a guy that I just wish we saw more of. And that's first-round pick Kobe Bufkin. Bufkin didn't play early on. Hurt his thumb, was out for a long period of time. Came back. We started to get some opportunities, especially when we thought, hey, well, Trae's out, so there's some minutes here. Then Kobe got hurt again. And maybe Dejounte Murray would get traded, and that would mean Bufkin would have an opportunity. But he just couldn't get the opportunity to put it together. But don't let that completely write him off here. He's 20. He played only 17 games and 12 minutes a night. The rankings and the numbers don't really mean much. 5 points, 1.6 assists in 12 minutes. Shot 23% on 3. That's horrible. His best comps are disgusting. Year 2 Josh Jackson and Year 2 Killian Hayes. That should make you shudder. 11th percentile EPM, 27th percentile crafted. Nothing good there. I like that as a non-point guard, his passer rating was 74th percentile. That's encouraging. And it just was a stop-start season where the role wasn't clearly defined and never got that chance to do stuff. I'll take you to his G League numbers. He played 14 games there, 32 minutes, averaged 24 points. He shot 36% from 3 on 7.4 attempts per game. He averaged 5.5 rebounds and 6 assists with 1.4 steals. And that's basically in line with the stuff that he did at Michigan. A combo guard who can defend pretty well, has got good size, can hit threes, can pass, can rebound a bit. This is a very interesting framework of a fantasy player. It's not going to happen while Bogdanovic, Matt Murray, and Trae are there, but it's not going to happen. It's probably not going to happen for Kobe this season. The year after, I'm very intrigued to see where it goes. I don't think he'll ever be a 20-point per game scorer, but 17, 5, and 4, 1.4 steals, 2.2 threes. I think that's a realistic best case outcome, which is a top 80-ish. Well, actually, look at Bogdanovic's numbers. There's no reason Kobe Bufkin can't be that player in 3 years' time, 2 years' time. We just saw none of it this season because of a number of circumstances, his own injuries, the team roster, and the no trade of a Dejounte Murray. And that brings us to the end of the Atlanta Hawks. Like I said, I'm not going to talk about AJ Griffin because he didn't play. He's completely out of favor. And there's Garrison Matthews and Wes Matthews and Trent Forrest. Nobody's. Nothing we need to pay attention to. But there is going to be big change, I'm guessing, on this team. Your big change that you can do is thumb it up and leave your comments on this video. But we'll see who gets traded. Actually, if you are still here watching, in the comments, who's traded? Trae, Dejounte, or neither? Just drop that in the comments, along with any other assessments you have on the Atlanta Hawks. Guys, we are done here. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. See ya.